Hello, welcome to the channel, welcome to the workshop. We now have the next 4 issues of Build Kit from Knight Rider. So here we are, next 4 issues of Build Kit from Knight Rider, issues 31 to 34. In this one we're going to need the rolling chassis because most of this is going to be working on the rolling chassis, working on the underside, the drive shafts and the exhausts. Okay, kicking off with issue 31. These are the parts we get in this issue. So we've got some drive shaft parts, we have a drive shaft protector, we have a couple of universal joints and the other half of that. We have a gearbox mount and we have a brake line distributor. We've also got a shed load of BP screws, some GM screws, and then we've got some lines here, fuel lines and brake lines. So we've got a very long line, a medium long line. We have 2 lines that are the same size, and we have a shorter line just there. So just do a quick flick through the magazine. Again, tells you more about the series, episode in depth, and then what we're interested in is all the instructions. As you can see, we're working on the underside here, so it'll be the drive shaft, etc. So we will be turning kit upside down and working on the underside, and then feeding through various cables. So we will be turning it and flipping it around, so we'll make sure that when you're doing that you don't damage any of the components on the car. One way I'll make sure that I won't be damaging the engine when flipping it over, I'll be using my Partwork Upgrades mat. It will just protect the engine when turning it over. So just put that to one side for the minute. The very first thing we're going to be doing is assembling our drive shaft. So we've got 2 parts of the drive shaft, and we're just going to place those together just like that, and then we're going to be securing it with 3 BP screws. Just like that. We're then going to be adding in these universal joints, and they are just going to be going in the ends just like that. They're going to be held in place with 2 BP screws either side. So that one in there, and then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other end. Just like that. Next we're going to be taking this next part of the joint, and we're going to be assembling it just like that, and again 2 more BP screws to secure that in place. So making sure that is slightly flexible, and then it'll make it easier for a later assembly, I'm sure. Well, this is the point where we need the car, so I'm just going to move those bits out of the way. I'm going to bring up my Partwork Upgrades mat. We'll be working on the underside of the car now, and we don't want to damage or scratch that part of the engine. So we'll just rest it over. And we're going to be getting our drive shaft. and we're going to be putting it into the end of this assembly here, and we're going to be securing it again with 2 more BP screws to the back of the gearbox. And that's in there just like that. We need to assemble the drive shaft protector, and that's just a case of it sliding in like that. You can see the hole lines up just there, and then we're going to be securing that through with a BP screw. So that is just like that. And then we're going to take this assembly, and the 2 prongs on here that you can see just side of the output shaft, we're going to be placing that just on there. Now you will need to lift the car slightly because it will push that output shaft down, and it's just going to pull the engine back down and hold that fully in place. And you're going to secure that with 2 GM screws. As they are GM screws going into metal, so I've just dipped this into a little bit of oil. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to loosely fit one in, and then do the other one, and then we'll tighten it up. Now I am lifting the chassis so that the engine's not being pressed on the mat while I secure this one down. So that is now in there, and as you can see, the engine now is completely secure this end. Next, just flip it around. So next to this circular hole, we have a indentation here, and we're going to be placing our brake distributor there. So that's just going to push into that hole, just like that, with the prongs facing to the front and to the sides. And then we're going to flip it over and secure it in place with a BP screw. So that is in there just like that. Just going to straighten it up. Just like that. Now this is where we're going to have some fun with cables. So the first one we're going to be using is not the longest one, but the next longest one. And this one is 31H, which is the fuel line. And we're going to be adding it onto the end of here. Okay, so I just got myself some warm water, because I find if you put these in a little bit of warm water, they go onto the ends of these nipples much easier, just like that. And then what we need to do, we need to feed it through these brackets that we put on a while back. So one through there, we've got another one here towards the front. Okay, so now we've got it through these 2 connectors. What we need to do is we need to pass it down through the engine, so it goes through this gap here. We're then going to flip it over, and then we're going to pass it down the side of the engine here, not making sure it's not catching on the steering shaft, and then we're going to pop it back down. I'm going to flip the car back over, so I now have it here, and then it's going to connect into the middle of the generator. It should be the only post you have available on the generator. However, I have noticed that it seems that one of mine is missing. So one of the cables must have fallen off since I last worked on this. And I'm not about to go looking for which cable that is. So that's now on there. So keeping the car upside down, we're now going to work on the other side of the fuel filter. And with this one, we're going to use one of the cables we had two of. That's going to come on the end of this one. Again, I'm just going to stick the end of that in a bit of hot water. You saw how I struggled on that one to try and get that on. Just making them a little bit warmer makes them work a little bit easier just to put on the end of the nipple. Just like that. So now we've got that on there, we need to feed it underneath this chassis post here, and then through this little hole in the chassis there. So like that, and then just through that hole there. Bit of a tight fit, as you can see, it just pokes up through there. We're now going to get our longest line, which is the brake line. Again, just put that in some warm water. Doesn't take very long, it's only thin material, but it's just enough to give a little bit of lubrication, I suppose, as well as making that a little bit supple. So that's now on the front of that. Now, it doesn't say to put it through this gap specifically, but that is what I'm going to do, because it does say to route it alongside the left chassis beam and then through these two brackets here again. And I don't think if you don't put it through there, it's never going to stay over that side. And again, through this front one. Grab it with some tweezers. And then it's going to take the same route as the previous one, and we're just going to pop it out the front. So turning that over again. It looks like it's just going to come out the front here for now and just stay loose. For the last bit of this one, we're going to flip it back over, and we're going to use the last two lines. So one of the pairs we're going to put on this side. So the longest one that you would have left. And that just goes on the right side of the car, and the shorter one goes on the left side of the car. And these are the rear brake lines. And that is stage 31, all done. Okay, moving on to issue 32. We're going to be concentrating on the exhaust. Again, I'll just do a quick flick through the magazine. Again, same sort of thing, more about a series, some good screen grabs for different episodes. And as you can see here, again, we're just concentrating on the end of the side of the car. Apart from a couple of wheels, I think by the end of this section, we're almost going to have a rolling chassis. Because I think in issue 34, I think we've got the rear drive shafts. So that is what we're doing this time around. So these are what we got. We've got the exhaust parts, and we've got some AP and BP screws. Now, disappointingly, for a car that's got so much metal on it, they've cheaped out on the exhaust, and these are all plastic parts. So the first things we're going to be doing, we're going to be assembling this section of the exhaust. So taking these two parts, and we're just going to be clipping those together. Just like that. And then we'll be using some AP screws to secure that. Just like that. And while we've got this part, we are just going to be connecting that on the end of there. I'm going to be placing this over the top. Just like that. And then again, more AP screws will secure it in place. Quite easier to just put that on your workbench and secure it through that one first. And that is that section of the exhaust complete. We're now going to be attaching this to the car, and we're going to be placing this on the end of the turbine here. So that will just slot together, just like that. And then it almost finds its own place as you do it. But you've got these various posts here that will line up with posts holes on the car itself. So if you just make sure all those line up. Just like that. And then we've got to hold that in place, flip it over, and then we'll secure that in place with some BP screws. I'm going to use 3 BP screws in total, one here, and one here. And then we have one more to do. Just ensuring this post here is lining up inside that hole. You can see it does just slot into that hole there. And then we've got another BP screw just to secure it there. Again, just supporting it from underneath. And that is done. It's looking just like that. Right, so now we've got issue 33, almost identical to issue 32, with the exception we have this metal retaining pin part as well. So that one is actually metal. All the exhaust parts are still plastic. We've got some AP, BP and EM screws. So as we did a moment ago, we're going to be assembling those two parts just like that. And we're going to be using some AP screws to secure it in place. Just like that. And just as we did before, we're going to be getting the front section of the exhaust, making sure that pin overhangs that nipple there, and then sandwiching that in like that. And again, 3 more AP screws to secure it in place. Just like so. Right, so as we've done before, we're just going to get the other part of the exhaust, making sure that's out of the way, and we're just going to put that on there as we did before. Just slot that in, and again just making sure that all the posts line up just like that. And then we're going to flip it over, and again some BP screws will secure that in place. And then one final BP screw, again as before, just in here. Right. Now we need to flip it back over. And we're now going to be using this bracket, and that's going to sit just there. And we're going to use 3 EM screws. Oops. So 3 EM screws just there, and then 2 BP screws through there into the exhaust. So EM screws first, again just put those in a bit of oil, just ensuring those are all nice and tight. And then 2 BP screws will just go through these other holes into the exhaust. Just like that. And that's it for that stage. So the final issue for this build pack, 1834, and we're working on the rear drive shafts and the differential housing. Now this is a nice solid bit of metal. You've got a couple of extra plastic parts there to make up the differential housing, and you've got some GM and BP screws. Yep. Have a quick flick through a magazine. It is I have to say, it is a very nice magazine. But the bit we're obviously mainly interested in is this part here, and you can see that it highlights the rear axle there. And you can see we're just putting that together. We're not actually putting that on the vehicle. It's just a case of building this one up. So the very first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting the 2 halves of the differential together. We've got 2 prongs here that will sit in these 2 holes here. Just like that. And then we'll be securing it from here with 2 BP screws. One and 2, just like that. Next, we're going to be getting the differential cover, and we're going to be placing that just on there like so. And it does only fit one way around. It's got this unique shape here, so it'll sit just like that. And then we use 2 GM screws to secure that in place. So that is now looking just like that. As I said, we don't actually put that on the car today, so that is it for this build pack. Until next month. Well, that's kit done for another month. I do hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see anything else that goes on in the workshop like this, or anything else on my channel, please remember to hit that subscribe button and ding that bell. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around.